on to the next conversation.
It's from 8 a.m.
Which 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes.
Saturday, Sunday. So moving on to the next conversation, which has to do with food security. Okay. We've been having this conversation for a while now, and I think that we should continue to have the conversation and get to grips with the challenge and resolve it. So there's been some back and forth. There were those who said, look, they're warning that we're likely to have a food crisis. And then government initially comes in and says, we're pretty fine, we should be fine. And it turns out yesterday, the Deputy Agric Minister has been speaking to this issue, and he concedes that if we don't do anything about it, we're likely to be faced with a food crisis. One of the things that government wants to do, and he was speaking on Top Story, is to buy as much of the staples that we have in the system right now. He concedes that we essentially let our guard down and we got a lot of our crops our staples being exported out of the country because it was cheaper. And yes, if it's cheaper, the people in the neighboring countries will come to the country and come, and buy whatever produce. But let's listen to him. He's been speaking.
And finally, for us, the government, the Minister of Agriculture has taken delivery of, I wouldn't say delivery, we've been giving about 81 to 85. I'm not getting the figure very right, but I know about 81 of the warehouses are ready.
Okay.
At the moment, we are expecting the harvest from our crops this year. Around this time, some farmers are beginning to harvest, and that, especially in the middle belt where we have two seasons. Around this time, farmers are harvesting. They are at the same time planting for the minor season, and the minor season, the rains have been good. So we know that the minor season we are going to get better harvest in the minor season even than the main season.
And the assurance from government to all of us is that we can avert a food shortage in this country.
We are surely going to avert this food shortage because the buffer stock is now getting ready, well positioned to be able to mop up every food that we produce in this country. Food security is national security. So it is everybody's responsibility to ensure that we have food in the system, the availability of it, and then the pricing too should be affordable. That is all what everybody is striving for. The situation has arisen as a result of several factors. And these factors include the global economic situation in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic that affected even the production of fertilizers and the supply of these fertilizers, transportation of these fertilizers to our country. And then secondly, the government also, because of revenue shortfalls, had challenges with payment to fertilizer suppliers. And this actually affected agriculture production in this country. But notwithstanding, the little that we had, we lowered our guard a little bit. We felt that we had enough, so our neighboring countries kept transporting our food products across the borders. Before we could say Jack, we were running into shortages. And because of the droughts that occurred in the second half of last year, the production levels were not as high as the previous years. So as we did not protect the little that we had, and we on our blind side, we allowed these things to go until we got to know that, no, this thing must stop. That the minister put a stop to all these things. We were doing very well until that time. But we've learned a lot of lessons from it. And just as the earlier speakers were talking about, we are no longer going to lower our gas this time. The harvest that we are going to have this year, both the minor season and then the major season in the southern sector. The northern sector, they have only one planting season. The planting season has been good in the northern sector because the rains have been good. Just that inputs did not go as we all expected because of the factors that I've listed above. earlier. So whatever we are going to get, we will guard them jealous.
So what we are doing in the interim is to ensure that our produce are not being exported to neighboring countries. That has started,
that is
you say?
one.
Okay.
And then...
Right, so listening to the Deputy Agric Minister just reminds me when he said that we dropped our guard, we let our guard down because we had a lot of produce and we got all that being, well, we had to allow it to be exported. And now we're looking at, no, we're not going to allow exports anymore. It just takes me back anymore to the days of, the biblical days when we had Joseph, who cracked, he had a dream about the fact that it was going to be farming and all that.
7 years of farming and 7 years.
So you buy plenty, you store, and then, so it's something that was cracked a long time ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Many years ago.
It's not rocket science. When you have a lot, keep some for a rainy day.
So yes, you'd say that, yes, we tried to keep some by having the buffer stock company and all that. But apparently we didn't keep enough. Essentially, that's what the story is about.
Yeah.
So yes, we're having this conversation. I feel that we should be having this conversation. We've spoken to the Peasant Farmers Association and several other groups in the agri sector and the food chain. But I think it's also good to speak with a farmer, someone who understands all that's going on and he can practicalize it. Because a lot of times we're speaking to the politicians, they tend to say some things. We're speaking to the representatives, they tend to say other things. But let's just have a conversation with a farmer and get to appreciate what their situation is like and some of the challenges they're having to go through. Joining us now is NASIR bin SAIH. He's CEO of Hamdallah Farms. Good morning to you, NASIR, and thanks for making yourself available at such short notice. How are you?
Good morning, Israel. Very well, thank you.
Okay. Where are you at the moment? In your farm?
No, I'm currently in Wa, the regional capital. My farm is situated in a village called Jairi. That's in the Wa East district of the region.
Okay, so we've heard lots of stories about food crisis and food shortages, prices going up. I'd want you to tell us what you do, the crops that you're actually producing or cultivating, and before we actually get into the conversation about food security, insecurity, and shortages and all of that.
Yes, so we currently cultivate maize, the popular staple. We also cultivate some beans as well. So in terms of crops, those are the two we cultivate at the moment. We also do other things like animal husbandry, and then we also do poultry as well.
I know you're also into, you cultivate oranges and other fruits?
Yes. So our farm it's got a land area of 500 acres.
500 acres?
Yes.
That's a lot.
We do have 350 acres of mangoes. Then we have about 60 acres of oranges. And the rest of it we used for the cultivation of other crops like maize, beans, and the ones I just mentioned.
Okay, so what has it been like for you this year as far as your operations are concerned? Well,
some time ago, some of us made these comments concerning food shortage. But at the time, we were actually seen as prophets of doom. Just like you mentioned, biblically, it has been told how during famine, we should treat food security. Well, this year, we cultivated 50 acres of maize. However, it's sad to say that we're not even going to get up to 5 acres of maize by the end of the season. The reason being that there was a heavy downpour this year. So you plant, you put your inputs, fertilizer has been applied, everything has been done according to what you're supposed to do. it gets to the tasseling stage where it starts flowering. That's where the comb starts building. Then the rains set in. So it rains almost every day in the region, or that's the part where my farm is. So in this situation, it rains just like humans. Plants also need nutrients, a balanced diet. So if they are just getting water all the time and not getting the sunlight and not getting other things, obviously it dies off. So yeah, there's nothing we could do. So it's gotten to that stage where yes, the maize is totally spoiled. Now, it is not just with our farm, but if you driving around the area where the farm is, various farmers are having the same problem. So some have the waters immersed in their plants. That's a total flood. We didn't have that, but we just had so much rain that more than we needed. So yes, so we are going to lose all our maize this year. Okay. And all the people around us.
Nasir, just not to cut you, but this rain thing, there's nothing anybody could have done about it.
No, for that, there's nothing anyone could have done about it. However, there's another problem that we faced, which could have, something could have been done about. That's fertilizer. So this year, for our 50 acres of maize that we cultivated, we didn't get a single fertilizer from the Planting for Food and Jobs, which means that we had to buy fertilizer from the open market. And getting the fertilizer from the open market was also a big challenge because it wasn't available. Like people were just rushing for them because they couldn't get the Planting for Food and Job ones, which is subsidized. So you only have to, you can only get fertilizer based on your connection with the chemical suppliers. So that has also been a big challenge for us this year. So we put in more money into fertilizer, probably three times more than we should have or we did last year. So that's yeah. So yeah, but
so in that case, Nasir, so in your case, you put in more money, probably 3 times more. And yet for the maize that you had to cultivate, you're saying that of the 50 acres, you've lost virtually everything.
Yes. Yes, exactly what I'm saying.
So the fertilizer that had to come by, you got some, and then essentially you've lost all that you invested in it.
Yes, we have. We've lost everything that we invested in. That's into the maize. Anything that we invested in the maize, we're going to lose everything.
What's the situation with the other farmers in the area? In your case, you can afford to go and buy the fertilizer yourself. But how about the other farmers who can't have access to the fertilizer because the Planting for Food and Jobs is not, or government is not supplying the subsidized fertilizer?
Okay, first of all, let me say this. Last year, we cultivated 100 acres of maize.
Okay.
We had to cut down to 50 because we're scared we're not going to get enough fertilizer. And there was this thing looming around that fertilizer is going to be short. There's going to be a shortage of fertilizer, so we didn't. So you can imagine what the peasant farmer went through. Now they would have to reduce the number of acreage they can that they usually cultivate. Now a lot of them didn't even apply fertilizer at all because they couldn't get fertilizer. So driving around the area again, you'd see farms with the plants on there, but with stunted growth, which means that they didn't apply fertilizer. So it's a very dire situation for the smallholder farmers. For us as a large or established farm, we are able to find ways probably to speak to the chemical suppliers to get some fertilizer. But for them, it has been really difficult. A lot of them have lost everything that they have invested in.
Now, talking about the shortage of fertilizer, would you say, at least you concede, that the Planting for Food and Jobs has supported you in the past? It's probably this year that you had that challenge, right? All right, we seem to have an issue with the NASIR's connection, but we'll try and reestablish that connection with him. All right, NASIR, I believe you're back now. So I was asking, you've had support from the Planting for Food and Jobs in the past, right?
Yes, I have.
So is it only this? What has the support been like?
Very beneficial.
What has the support been like?
The support, well, it had to do with, we initially does, I mean, in the books, it's supposed to be fertilizer support, like support by giving us fertilizer, and then also extension services. But the program, we only get the fertilizer. So usually they give us fertilizer at a subsidized price. Before, we used to get the fertilizer, then cultivate the farms, then later we pay the Ministry of Agriculture. But now it has changed. The chemical sellers are the ones who deal in them. So all the fertilizers are sent to various licensed chemical shops who then distribute it to the farmers.
All right. So on the issue of fertilizer, I must say I was speaking with one other commercial farmer, Gov't Farms, and they're indicating that they haven't had a problem with, and he says that the farm is in Myong, George Boache Safong. Their farm is in Myong. They don't have a problem with the flooding. And he says they are looking at doing 600 acres of sorghum, of maize and sorghum. And I was asking, how did they go around the fertilizer challenge? And he says they had to plan ahead. So they foresaw a challenge, and so they were in a position to buy the fertilizer ahead of time. They had arranged with some of the fertilizer manufacturers, and then that's how they resolved their problem. Maybe going forward, it's something you may also want to look at. But
yes,
let's come back to this situation where you're faced with your 50 acres of maize that you cultivated. You're saying that you've essentially lost everything. Is it like everything gone, or you can salvage a few acres?
Well, if you're a farmer, you'll understand me. If you cultivate, for example, our mangoes are 350 acres. If we're getting, if there is a disease and then we are only harvesting 10 acres, to the farmer, that's just a loss. You know, so that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. You find some areas that are highlands on the farm, and you find a few patches of the maize doing well there. But for a commercial farmer, that's just a big loss for you, because we're spending much more on buying seeds, on fertilizer, on labor and all that, and you're only cultivating just a little. You're only harvesting only a little bit, you know. But I think there's something I want to say about the climate. Yeah, climate change is real, and we all know that we can't, as of now, we can't do anything about the rains coming. However, if we are to invest in precision farming, I think the government is something the government has to look at. We should look at precision farming, where we are able to know exactly what the trends are now with in terms of weather, so that farmers would know exactly when to plant. We don't have that in the country. I would just ask the government to probably invest in equipment that helps with precision farming, and then also train extension officers on precision farming, so that they can train farmers on what to expect and the time to plant, because times have changed. And if we're going by the old methods of doing things, then we are not going to get anywhere. So I think we should invest in precision farming. And also, we should also invest in irrigation, because we spend, for example, for this part of the country, we spend much more time not planting than the times that we plant. For example, now, after October, it's going to be the lean season. So no one can plant maize in our region all the way till the following year. So if investment is made into irrigation, where we are able to irrigate and plant, it will solve this problem of food insecurity that is looming. Because we only rely on rain-fed agric, which doesn't help us. And I think since childhood we've heard this over and over again. Rain-fed agric is not the way forward. It's not the way forward. But till date we are still doing it. So I think the government should have a second look, investing in irrigation in various farms around the country.
All right. So you brought up some interesting points. I like to stick to those 2 points. One of them has to do with precision farming, which you're saying that you should get to know, or government should inform or let the farmers know the exact time you can expect the rain, so you can plant around those periods. But I've spoken with the Ghana Meteorological Agency, and they say that at the beginning of every year, they make available that information and let the farmers know when exactly the rains will come. Are you not aware of this information or this data?
Well, I'm aware of it, but as I said, how is the accuracy that
okay? So you got the information from Ghana Meteo, but it wasn't accurate enough.
No, because last year we planted at a certain time, which was okay for us. Now we got from the Ministry of Agric, they told us that this is what the meteorological agency is saying, that don't plant at this time. So this is the best time to plant. And that is exactly what we did. We planted at the time that we were advised to, but it didn't go well for us. So I think that there's still an issue with the accuracy of data that we get.
Okay. So yes, that's something that can be looked at or should be looked at. The other issue you raise has to do with irrigation. And I'm wondering, are you not close to any of the dams that are supposed to be built, One Village, One Dams?
No, we are not.
Okay, so you're not close. You're not close, but you know of.
We have invested in boreholes on our farm. So we have sunk about 6 boreholes, which we use for some sort of irrigation. However, we cannot, if to make it commercial, we need a very huge investment to be commercial. So we only do it for some simple irrigation, like probably vegetables, a few acreage of vegetables. But in order to be able to commercialize it, it needs to be a heavy investment, and we can't do it on our own. Government would need to come in this.
Okay, so NASIR, you tell us, what is it that you need to ensure that the boreholes that you have, the few boreholes that you have, you can scale it up so that you would have enough to engage in like commercial irrigation?
You see, just having the boreholes is just a start. The accessories that come with it is what is expensive. So you need like all the pipes, all the drips, the sprinklers. It's quite a heavy investment. So you need to, for example, if you want to do 10 acres of maize, it means that for the whole space of the 10 acres, you need to have lines all through. You need to have sprinklers all through. You need to have the pumps that would pump the water. You need to have like tanks that will store the water. So that's what is required to. And for every plant, it's a different sort of irrigation facility.
Technology. Okay.
So technology, yes. So for maize is different. For things like vegetables, different. For vegetables, you probably need just drip irrigations, which just drips into just little drops. But for maize, you probably would need the sprinklers that would sprinkle all around the farm. And for in some jurisdiction, they have very, 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 very nice technologies that are used. They use technology that would precision irrigation systems that gives the plant the exact nutrients that it needs, so the exact water that it needs, the exact sunlight that it needs. It's able to make sure that the plant gets enough. But we just depend on this, on nature.
All right. Now, NASIR, you've lost 50 acres as far as the maize that you cultivated is concerned. is there anything that can happen that can turn around your fortunes, or your years completely lost as a result of that?
Well, with the maize, no, we have lost it. But however, because of the commercial nature of our farm, we wouldn't be hit as hard as someone who is just a small farmer, because we do other things. And so we don't just depend on maize. Maize is just seasonal for us. And because we do poultry, we just cultivate the maize just to feed our poultry farm. But for the maize, there's nothing that we can do. It's all gone. If we had planted earlier in the year and this had happened, then we probably could have just taken, like, re-plowed the land and replanted, because the rains were still coming. But it's too late now for us, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you very much, NASIR, for making time to speak with us. And I'm sure the authorities are listening, and whoever can help or whatever help they can give you, they should. But I mean, I like the bit about precision farming that you're talking about, that you get to know exactly when the rains are going to come, and let's just make it as accurate as possible, so that you don't end up in a situation like this where you've lost 50 acres of the maize that you cultivated. So hopefully things are going to get better, and we're going to have more dams around you, so that we can get your farm irrigated. But thank you very much.
NASIR, you're welcome, anytime.
Yes, NASIR Mohammed bin Saih is CEO of Hamdallah Farms, and he was speaking to us about his situation as far as the food security situation is concerned. Now, I mentioned one other farmer, Gov't of Gov't Farms, and he had indicated, we're supposed to have had a conversation with him. He couldn't make it because he has set up Zoom meetings where he's going to seek funds. So he said he had a fundraiser and he necessarily had to take part. But he had told me that they had cultivated 600 acres of maize and sorghum, and they are looking at harvesting by December. And he talks about they're not being affected by the floods and the heavy rains as happened in the case of NASIR. So we're hopeful, or I am hopeful, that even though some, like NASIR, have lost heavily, there are also Gov't who is looking ahead or looking forward to some impressive or massive harvest this December. So that way the situation doesn't get so terrible that we're having to have a food shortage. But yes, this is what we're faced with. And that'll be for the conversation on the AM show as far as food security is concerned. But we have more coming up